All right, guys. Hello, everybody. I hope everyone's doing well today. This is the NBA Tournament Strategy Show. I'm Bob226, aka Josiah, and today we are going to do a quick look back at yesterday, see what went well, see what didn't go as well, and then look at this slate and show the highlight spots. There's really three teams that we're really going to be focusing on, and then there's the others. And then after that, later today on the pre-lock show, which will be at 4 p.m. today. It's Friday. So 4 p.m. pre-lock show. We will work on who we're actually increasing exposures to and what we're actually going to be doing on the slate. So the implementation. That's only for VIP members. So to do that, click on the link in the description, use promo code BOB for 10% discount, and go from there. But all right, guys, let's talk about yesterday. This was the 100K winning lineup from yesterday. And you'll see a lot of guys that we were on. For me, I've already back tested, and I was one core play away from passing this line. And that core play hurt a lot. It was Chris Middleton. Mm, 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 mm. To be honest with you guys, I would do it again. I would do it again. Um, but when I back tested, I literally took out Chris Middleton from my core plays, and I had Okogie exposure, who crushed yesterday at very low ownership, and so that's what allowed the back test to pass that. And literally, no changes outside of that. So for me, whenever I get that close, I feel like we were on the right track. John Morant, we forced exposure to on the pre-lock show, so we had some exposure there. No leverage, but it was enough. Tyler Hero was a core play. Mikal Bridges was a leverage play. Jimmy Butler was a core play. Orlando Robinson was not a play. But Weeva, shout out to you, man. On the pre-lock show yesterday, he mentioned that Orlando Robinson was going to be getting upgraded from the G League, and he was spot on. Orlando Robinson was the play. I think what we should have, or what I should have done with the Miami Heat, is probably try to get leverage on just each of the centers and just make sure that they weren't in the same lineups with each other. But I didn't do that, and that was definitely a weakness spot. But even with the exposure I did have, it would have been enough if I just didn't have Chris Middleton as a core. Similar story to Jordan Clarkson. Robert Covington, I was wrong on. So I took the Batum route because he's a very versatile player, and I wanted some exposure to him. But it was the Robert Covington night, which happens sometimes. And then last spot was Jock Landale. I kept my whatever min percentage I had on him from the pre-lock show. I kept that on him, so that went well. But Biombo started and was not the guy you needed, which is weird when that happens. Thomas said, "Will there be an NFL show for Saturday's games?" Great question, man. Geek and I and the rest of the team are trying to figure that out now. Scheduling's tough, so we're trying to see. The Tactics show is at 5 p.m. That's for the NFL content. We're still trying to figure out if that's going to be for Saturday or Sunday. So TBD, TBD. What's up, Thomas? Good to see you, man. JJ said, "Do you look at the lineup construction in NBA or no? Like this lineup being 3-2-1-1-1." Okay, yeah, thank you, because I was not following you there. I do like to, so I don't over analyze it, but I'm like, okay, the Heat had injuries. There were 3 Heat that you needed in that situation. That makes sense to me. And then we had like a few pieces from John Morant, and then the Suns had injuries and you needed 2 pieces from there. So I just kind of keep track of things like that, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to try to force 3-2-1-1 stacks. It just means that uh, like I like to kind of tally how many players from one team max can be in the Nuts lineup, just so if I do start creating more rules when it comes to how many players will be in one lineup, I can stay on top of that. Typically, it varies from slate to slate, so it's not something that I care about too much, but it's something that I still like to kind of keep track of. Like every slate, I look at a ton of data that doesn't really move the needle for me too much, but I still like to keep track of it. I look at it like that. Thomas said, "Did you do good last night?" I did okay. I would have done a lot better without Chris Middleton. Chris Middleton held back a lot of beautiful lines, which is why when I did the back test, it was just one change away. Just one change away. Gotta love it, though. Gotta love it. JJ said, "Small slate relative." Yeah. All right, guys, let's get into this slate. For those of you that don't like to watch the long version of the show, the teams that you're going to probably want to make sure you have exposure to that have injury news are the Hawks, the Golden State Warriors, and the Minnesota Timberwolves. It's probably going to be the main pieces of information we need. So let's start off with one of those pieces of news with the one and only Atlanta Hawks against the Charlotte Hornets. So the Hawks will be without Clint Capella for a while. John Collins is out, and DeJounte Murray is still out. The Hornets are one of the worst defensive teams in the league, so this is going to be a spot we want to load up on. Everyone's going to have a ton of Onyeka Okongwu tonight. That's not a secret play. He's just a super cheap center who's going to see 30 minutes, who's actually a relatively high fantasy points per minute guy for his price tag. So smash spot for him. And for us tonight, I would be very surprised if he doesn't end up being a core play for me tonight. When it comes to the rest of the Hawks, I love them. Like Trae Young, awesome spot for him. The Bogdanovich brothers are going to be in a good amount of my lines tonight. And then DeAndre Hunter sees a usage increase as well. Like all of these guys are in interesting spots, and I'm going to have some exposure for sure. Love Jerk said, can you download lineups from the DS to DraftKings and FanDuel? Yep, you can. You can. You literally click this download button after you optimize your lines, and then you can go from there. All right. And then on the Charlotte Hornets side of things, we have Gordon Hayward, who's questionable. That's pretty big news. For me, the main pieces that I would be open to having exposure to in this game are primarily like LaMelo Ball. It's really LaMelo. I think you can try to take some GPP shots on guys like PJ, Rozier, Oubre, but for me, it's Ball is the main guy I would have that I'm going to have exposure to on this slate. The rest of the Hornets are more lineup fillers for me. But the Hawks side of this game is the side that we're excited to have exposure to from a DFS standpoint, just because of their price tag. All right, I'll speed through some of these other games because they're less interesting, at least as of right now. Kevin Huerter for the Kings is questionable as of right now. As we recall from the last slate, Kevin Huerter being out is a big deal. Terrence Davis and Malik Monk, they're the main guys who benefit the most from Huerter being out. Of course, Terrence Davis would be viable once again if we get the news that Huerter is out. I think Malik Monk will go overlooked in a spot like that, so we can also consider him as well there too. On the Pistons side of things, they're relatively healthy. Marvin Bagley was not on the injury report. Isaiah Livers is still out. This is tough for me. I am always on the wrong side of Killian Hayes. Whenever I play him, he's not great. Whenever I don't, he does well. So I'll probably just let the domination station decide my fate. It's weird because we've been kind of like, there's obviously upside here on him at low ownership. We've seen that over the last few slates. It's just I'm not hitting the right spots on it. So when that happens, I stop chasing and just let the domination station decide what it wants to do. But really a game that's not too exciting from a DFS or watching standpoint for me as of right now. On the other side of it, like with the Kings, talking about the Kings, Sabonis and Fox are always GPP viable, but they're not particularly interesting. The matchup is great. It's just as long as Huerter is in, everyone's healthy, and so no one stands out too much in that spot. If he's out, though, it definitely does get more interesting. Thomas said, how about Jovic yesterday? LO, he didn't play, which was weird. Yeah, it's weird. On the pre-lock show, I was talking about it. I was like, the rotations are going to be weird, and we just saw it coming. We saw it coming a mile away that it was just going to be one of those weird nights, and I didn't have a great read on it, and it was a struggle. It was a struggle. That's why, I don't really regret not having a ton of Robinson, because who would have saw Jovic not really having a ton of run yesterday and Haslam starting? The troll job, A+, A+, A+. All right, moving on. The Magic, we have Jalen Suggs out still. Gary Harris is out. Chima Okeke's out. Wendell Carter Jr. is out. Jonathan Isaac is out. The Magic, they have injuries, but these guys have all been out for a good amount of time. So they're all priced pretty much where they should be. So no one stands out too much. The matchup against the Celtics is a tougher one. So I'm not excited to force exposure here, but we have seen through multiple slates that some of these Magic guys can slide through and hit the winning lineup. So this is not a spot where I'm trying to fade the Magic either. It's just one that I want to trust the DS on a little bit. The Celtics, Robert Williams is finally going to play, which is just a nice thing. Like if you like basketball, I think a lot of us are just pulling for the Time Lord. He's a very, very efficient, high fantasy points per minute guy. But with his knee surgery, he's not going to see a ton of run tonight. His price tag is probably about right. So I'm not trying to force exposure to him, but hope he comes back and stays healthy for a while. Al Horford is questionable. If Horford is out, then that does make some of these Celtics guys a little bit more interesting and viable. But it's a situation with Robert Williams returning I don't really want to play around with too much. So hopefully Al Horford plays. Fingers crossed. Of course, Al Horford, if he's out too, that does make this a slightly easier matchup for the Magic front court as well. So some interesting pieces there. All right, moving on. We have the Pacers at the Cleveland Cavaliers. For the Pacers, they don't really have a ton of guys out. Chris Duarte's out. That doesn't really matter anymore. Cleveland Cavs, they have Dean Wade out. They have Dylan Windler out. And then Rubio's been out for a while. So nothing really stands out too much here. Outside of the Pacers, still not performing great against opposing front courts. So the Cavaliers are a solid defense, but they have one of the better front courts in the league, at least from a defensive standpoint. But I like being able to attack with Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, especially if they're not going to be super popular. I can see them having a high ceiling in this spot, and their price tag isn't crazy either. So I like it for them. I've been on the Miles Turner train for a long time, always rooting for him, but I can't force it in this matchup. It's just not one that I can chase. Kevin Love and Lamar Stevens are both kind of popping a little bit from like a high upside standpoint. The sim model likes them both too. So it's definitely interesting. Alex, appreciate you, said Smart is now questionable as well, which definitely makes the Celtics stand out even more. Like, of course, if Smart is out, then Brogdon and White are more viable as well. And you can't forget about Tatum and Brown. So the slate could get wild, guys. The slate could get wild, but hopefully it does not. Hopefully it doesn't. I think we have enough news. Like we don't need a ton. We don't need a ton. So those are some definitely high upside potential pieces that I would consider. Stevens typically starts in these spots, but he's a low usage guy, so he's not someone that I tend to force exposure to, especially if he's going to be relatively popular on this slate. Mitchell and Garland are guys I'm not super excited about on this slate, at least not as of right now, unless something pops up, but I'm not loving that spot for them. Halliburton and Crew, again, I don't love attacking teams against the Cavs, so it's not something that I'm going to force exposure to. JJ said Turner's one of those love/hates for me. It's weird. I think I used to hate Turner. Like, I think I used to kind of hate Miles Turner a little bit because he was always hurt or injured and he was very volatile. But this season, he's been great. Like, I don't know. It might be like a contract season for him or something. I know there were trade rumors going on for a little bit, but I'm loving it. I'm loving it. Next up, we have the Nets against the Toronto Raptors. It looks like Royce O'Neal is healthy. Seth Curry is questionable. Patty Mills is doubtful. So what we have seen is that Ben Simmons has been on a bit of a minutes limit over the last few games, and Claxton has really performed well in those spots. The issue is we don't know how long Ben Simmons will be on a minutes limit for, so it does limit my excitement to like try to force exposure to Claxton here, but Claxton does make sense for that reason. Claxton also has just kind of like a solid game log history against the Raptors too. So he has some things moving in his direction, but ultimately no one stands out too much for me. For the Raptors, OG Anunoby is still out. Otto Porter is still out. Preston Achua is still out. Um, at this point, they're all priced up appropriately for me. I wish Gary Trent Jr. was a little bit cheaper just because he burned everyone last time out. I know no one's going to play him. So it's just slightly interesting to me, just like that contrarian piece, but that's just a pure ownership play. Outside of that, looks like Thad Young is popping, and I don't have a ton. I believe it's probably because he's been starting for OG, so I think it's just like the increase in minutes. But I do want to dig into that a little bit more just to make sure that I agree with like the projection and things of that sort. I want to look into like the last few games and see how many minutes he's been playing and the consistency of that. I think he's probably a solid play. Definitely a nice, probably a solid pivot off of some of the other chalk, but it's just one I want to dig a little bit deeper into. All right, guys. Then we get this crazy Golden State Warriors game against the 76ers. Let's see. Pulling up my Golden State notes. All right. The Golden State Warriors. Klay Thompson is questionable. Andrew Wiggins is out. Draymond Green is questionable. James Wiseman is available. Andre Iguodala is out. And Stephen Curry is out, unfortunately. Sad news there. The guy who has the largest usage increase in these spots is the one and only Jordan Poole. But really, we're going, especially if Klay Thompson is out and if Draymond Green is out, we're going to be able to play all of these Golden State Warrior bench guys. The matchup isn't my favorite, and the blowout risk is semi-concerning for the Sixer guys. But with that being said, I am going to have a ton of exposure to Poole, DiVincenzo. I think we can't even forget about Kuminga if Draymond Green is out. I think we do that all the time, so definitely don't want to do that again. This team is just going to be in a fantastic spot no matter what. And if Klay is out, like he probably will end up being, he was a late questionable call. So this could be an interesting game for sure, with a lot of names that we don't want to do, that we don't want to play, but we have to play. I don't hate the idea of playing Joel Embiid here. It feels weird, but the matchup is pretty good. The Warriors have been pretty bad against bigs in general, and now they're missing guys. I think a lot of people are going to be scared of the blowout risk here, so we're not going to want a ton of exposure here. But we've seen, like, even during the COVID era and things of that sort, just because you're missing your starters doesn't mean that you're going to blow out the other team. So, interesting situation. I don't know how I'm going to handle it exactly yet, but definitely a spot that I'm going to have a lot of exposure to. Next up, we have the Knicks against the Chicago Bulls. The Knicks are pretty healthy. Obi Toppin is out still, so that matters a little bit. For Chicago, Ayo Dosunmu is questionable, and then Lonzo Ball is out still. This isn't a game that I love, but it does feel like a solid GPP spot. Really, the Knicks guys have been on a run here. I know we've had like Julius Randle show up in the nuts line. We've seen Brunson have a heater. So I feel like they're just in really good form right now. Chicago Bulls historically aren't a team that I love picking on. It's definitely a game that I'm going to have to dig a little bit deeper into, to be honest with you guys. I just feel like there's some potential here, and it might go a little overlooked, and it's a spot that I want to dig into a little bit, and we'll talk about in more detail in the pre-lock show. It's interesting. It's literally like in the middle of two like interesting pieces, games surrounded by news. JJ said, wish Dre was suspended for a game. Why? I mean, I would love for him to be out tonight, but I don't know if suspended is what I want. All right. Next up, we have the Timberwolves. So this game has a lot of injury news too. Rudy Gobert is questionable, huge, with Cat already out. D'Angelo Russell is questionable, also huge. Austin Rivers appears to be healthy, and then Taurean Prince is out. If Gobert is out, I think we're expecting Naz Reid to start. So could be another gigantic piece of value for us on this slate. I think Kyle Anderson would also start to pop a little bit more for us than he already is. If they're healthy, I think Rudy Bear is viable still at 7,600. Going back to if they're out, I love Anthony Edwards in this spot. The Thunder is a team that we can attack, and I have absolutely no concerns going back there. Thomas, you're right. Like Jalen Noel is also in play here too. We're going to have a lot of exposure to these Minnesota Timberwolves tonight with these potential injuries. Hopefully, we get the news early. Would love for that to be the case, but we don't know. But primarily, as of right now, the way that I'm thinking about it, like I said at the start of the show, the teams I'm going to have the most exposure to as of right now is really the Hawks, the Golden State Warriors, and the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Celtics are they're feeling left out, so they're trying to have some injury news to join them, but that's how I'm thinking about it right now. Outside of that, I do think that SGA is slightly more viable than he has been for a while. His price tag is finally no longer in the 10Ks, so like the 9,700 number is a nice breath of fresh air. Anthony Edwards' price has also gone down a little bit too, which is nice. So these guys aren't quite at the premium that they were at earlier in the year, and I don't hate the matchup for them. All right, only two more games, guys. Next up, we have the Portland Trailblazers against the uh, Dallas Mavericks. The Trailblazers are looking pretty healthy. Josh Hart is probable. Drew Eubanks is probable. Trendon Watford is probable. Nasir Little is out. Gary Payton is out. So this Portland team has been really, really good from an offensive standpoint. They're looking pretty balanced as well, but they're also pretty healthy, which means I'm not as interested in them. They're also facing off against the Mavericks, who we talk about all the time. They play at a very slow pace, which means that I'm not really trying to attack them from an from a DFS standpoint. From the reverse side of that, Luca is always viable. The matchup isn't the softest or the easiest, but Luka's pretty much matchup proof. As long as the game stays close, he's viable. I think Christian Wood is popping a good bit as well. I believe we're starting to see a little bit more minutes consistency from him. He's always been a very efficient player with a high fantasy points per minute upside. If those minutes are really there, then we can trust it. I don't know if I trust it fully yet, so that's going to be another spot that I dig a little bit deeper into to see if I really want to follow the chalk on that one. All right, and then we have the last game on the slate where Anthony Davis and LeBron James are probable, like they always are, so no surprises there. Um, let's see any more. Winian Gabriel is out. Juan Toscano Anderson is out for the Nuggets. Michael Porter Jr. is out still. So this game is interesting, mostly because both of these teams haven't been the best defensively. So we've been able to attack the Nuggets with opposing point guards. And this is the last game on the slate by a lot. And then Nikola Jokic, if he's actually going to be like 3 to 4% owned, I'll pay that for him when MPJ is out. Also, we can play bigs against the Lakers. That's been something we've been able to do all year. I'm okay with that. Anthony Davis, I'm not as excited about in this matchup. It's a spot I want to dig deeper into to make sure I'm not missing his upside, but at least from like a theoretical standpoint, I like when Anthony Davis plays more of the old school big five position. That's when I feel like he's scoring at his best and most efficiently. I think against Jokic, he might try to get cute. So that's just kind of like a theory that I have on him. LeBron James, he's viable. I'll have some exposure if the DS gives me him, but I'm not going to force it. Jamal Murray is always interesting to me. I'll definitely have some exposure to him. Potential leverage play as well against the Lakers. And then outside of that, the rest of these guys are lineup fillers. No one that I'm super excited and or passionate about to play. All right, guys. So that's pretty much this slate. Like I said, we pretty much know which teams we're going to have a ton of exposure to. There are some questionable spots where we're going to have to keep an eye on the news per usual and try to make sure we're on the right side of that. But outside of that, again, the pre-lock show will be at 4 p.m. today. So I look forward to seeing everyone then for that. But appreciate you guys for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. But I look forward to seeing you guys later. Peace.